this little book is reworked in the form of an interview between the exorcist, Don Giuseppe Tomaselli, and the impure devil, named Melid. Obviously not a real interview with the devil. The title is ironic given that there is no will on the part of the damned to collaborate spontaneously in the salvation of souls, and they must however submit to the will of the Almighty, which they can only obey without exception. These revelations were most likely taken from the exorcisms conducted by Don Giuseppe Tomaselli in several sessions, and then reported in such a way as to be able to make readers understand the story and the themes covered, for Disegno Divino, in a simpler way, omitting to report all the procedures of the actual exorcism ritual. It is presumable that the priest Don Tomaselli, in order not to create panic or fear in readers not from this field, to whom this little book is addressed, wanted to soften the tone of the language of these revelations and wanted to report them as teaching and to be meditated on. We must always keep in mind that the exorcist does not hold a real dialogue with the demon, as may seem from these writings reported below, due to the impossibility of finding a person in him, of an angelic nature, now fallen or human when instead of taking possession of the possessed, the evil spirits of an angelic nature are spirits of a humanoid nature, as for example Judas Iscariot, who is willing to dialogue with sincerity, first because no damned person has the spirit of truth of God in himself and therefore does not he would utter what lies, second because it is everything that is contrary to the good. From this we understand that under only one condition can Satan speak the truth and collaborate for the salvation of the living, if he is forced by God. And the exorcist actually forces the devil or demons who take possession of the bodies of the possessed to say the truth, to leave them alone and return to hell where they came from. Therefore, keeping this little premise in mind, we can go and read the interview with Melid, Impure Demon, by Don Giuseppe Tomaselli. Exorcist, Melid, let's have a conversation, to do an interview. I know from study and experience that you always work for evil, since you are confirmed in evil and cannot want anything other than evil. But I also know that even if you always want evil, indirectly, against your will, by divine disposition you can cooperate for good, so it happens that many times you tempt evil and whoever overcomes your temptations is enriched with eternal merits. This interview will be able to do a lot well, and I pray to God that he compels you to answer the questions I present to you. Demon, well, Pretacho, what do you ask? Don't forget that you talked to Melid. And tell me, how do you know that my name is Melid? Exorcist, you told me this yourself at our first meeting many years ago. In fact, then there were two of you, you and your assistant Ofer. Then I asked you, how come there are two of you? You usually go around the world in 1 or in 3 or in 7, and you replied annoyed, what do you know about these numbers? Before continuing with the interview, I ask you an apparently useless, indeed rather silly question, do you, Melid, as a demon, exist or not? Demon, ignorant. And how could I not exist? Exorcist, liar. When it suits you, you say that you exist, otherwise you blatantly say that you don't exist. When in that seance, the curious called the soul of a deceased and you said, the devil does not exist, it is the priests who teach you this rubbish. Tell me Melid, before you were a demon who were you? Demon, I was a high official of the angelic court, a cherub, and now I am an officer of Satan. Exorcist, but how did you decide to leave paradise and fall into hell? You didn't know that hell was prepared for you, why did you dare to rebel against God? Demon, he, the Most High, told me and my companions that he would test us, he did not tell us that he would punish us with hell, in eternal fire, and it's fire, fire. Exorcist, and what was the test to which all the angels were put? Demon, accepting that the Son of the Most High would take human nature and we, of an angelic nature, which is far more noble than the human one, would have to humble ourselves before him and adore him. Lucifer, who shone like the sun in the firmament, rebelled, if he becomes man, he said, I will not serve him, I will be superior to him. The figure of a man appeared during the test. Exorcist, was this man's figure crowned with thorns, or was he on a cross? Demon, no, it was the figure of a simple man. Great hosts of angels were of the opinion of Lucifer. A terrible fight was engaged between Michael and Lucifer, and between fire and brimstone we suddenly fell into the infernal pit. Exorcist, Nice profit you made that day, unhappy rebel angel. Are you now sorry for the harm you did? Demon, repentant? Never. He, the Most High, should not have humiliated himself like this. I hate and will forever hate Christ, because of him I find myself in hell. How unjust this God is. I have committed only one sin and I am condemned in eternal fire, while you many sins, and very serious ones, have that woman, the Madonna, if only we had it too. Exorcist, how are you organized in hell? Demon, Christ gave you some idea, when it was reproached against him that he cast out demons with the support of Beelzebub, saying, how can Satan go against Satan? A kingdom divided against itself falls into ruin, while Satan's kingdom endures. In hell is the true kingdom of Satan. Lucifer is the leader, the despot. Those who were officers of the angelic court are now officers of the infernal hosts. I was a cherub and today I am a high official of Satan's kingdom, with the most lucrative and interesting task, which is to push towards impurity. Exorcist, you demons do not need to sleep to get your daily bread, and you cannot feel the weight of tiredness. How do you carry out your business? Demon, hating God and gnawing at us with anger and jealousy against human creatures. By venting hatred towards God, we should feel pleasure, instead everything increases our suffering. Exorcist, asks for further clarification. Are the demons always in the pit of the fiery furnace, or can you also get out of it? Demon, by permission of the Almighty, Lucifer can send demons around the world. As a priest, you know that you cannot scrutinize divine plans. The demons who roam the world continue to suffer, because they are always under the punishing hand of God. But by going around the world they can get some relief. Exorcist, I understand this situation somewhat, because Jesus said, when a demon comes out of a man, he wanders around seeking rest. And then you yourself, Melid, made me understand this, when during an exorcism you asked me, tell me where I have to go, and I'll go. It goes out to sea in the body of some fish. You replied, I am looking for men. And you added, and why don't you want to go into the body of the fish? You replied, and why don't you go and rest in the body of the beasts? Therefore, you demons who wander the world, while suffering continuously from your state of damnation, may have ups and downs of suffering. You demons, when you go around the world, if God allows it, you can take possession of a human body. The obsessed are proof of this. In the Gospel we often speak of these unhappy possessed people. When you cannot take possession of men, you take possession of beasts, as you did in Gerasa, at the time of Jesus, entering the bodies of those pigs that were grazing. You can also take possession of certain places, as could happen in the rooms where seances are held, and there you can produce strange and terrifying phenomena, for which priestly work with particular blessings is necessary. Demon, do you have anything else to ask? Exorcist, I'm still at the beginning. I present to you my observation, the result of experience, which concerns the obsession of men and women. Since you enjoy a certain rest in the human body, when obsession is allowed, you do everything possible to remain in the human body and resort to your numerous wiles. First of all, do everything possible to not be recognized as a devil, so as not to be chased away. Choose human bodies that have some ailment, so people instead of paying attention to the obsession pay attention to the disease. In the body of certain obsessives there can therefore be illness and obsession, so as not to get chased away. You often say, I am a good spirit and I have come to help the whole family. You fear exorcisms and, when you are discovered, you deceive the exorcist priest by trying to make people understand the uselessness of religious spells, so that the priest, not seeing any fruit, abandons the exorcisms. You sometimes used this tactic with me too, and I tried not to fall into your net. Do you remember Melid, that man you had obsessed over for more than 20 years? Well, every day I did the exorcism, you resisted. I started doing it twice a day and then, angry, you said, enough, I cannot stand it anymore. I prefer to return to the hellish pit. Among the pitfalls of the obsessed there is also this, when you are discovered you often say, I am the soul of the person killed. Do you remember, Melid, when in an exorcism I asked, who are you? You replied, I am Marshal Bluetti of Palermo, killed 16 years ago. As the prayers continued, you revealed yourself, yes, I am the devil. And why do you want to kick me out? What harm do I do to this creature? Melid, I would like to know why you demons prefer to return to hell rather than undergo exorcisms. Demon, when we are in hell, the suffering is great, during the exorcism, the suffering is great. In hell we are, so to speak, far from God, during the exorcism we are close to the divinity and the suffering increases, like when there is a burning furnace, the closer you get, the more the heat increases. Exorcist, who would have thought that so many relationships would have to develop between you, Melid, and me, not of good friendship, but of mutual struggles? And what struggles? I ask myself several times, jokingly, but why does Melid feel so much attraction towards me? She follows me night and day to torment me in spirit and body. You, oh devil, are so industrious in disturbing me, but being an angel of darkness, you prefer to molest me or appear to me at night. Demon, Pretacho, it doesn't take much to understand the reason for my behavior towards you. I work to snatch souls from God and you work to steal souls from me. Spend your life writing and disseminating popular religious booklets and readers believe what you write. Exorcist, but if you are powerful, when I write books against you and I have written 4 directly against you, why don't you paralyze my hand? Demon, I can't. That guy, God, doesn't allow it. Exorcist, remember, Melid, what you did a couple of months ago. I was about to get out of bed, it was 6 o'clock, you came into my room angrily and grabbed me by the neck, you wanted to strangle me. I felt your hands on my neck and other parts of my body. The fight was strong, but you won, because Christ has given you a weapon that I cannot resist. It is the invocation of the blood of Christ, an invocation that you continuously repeat when I am upon you. That morning you had 2,000 books ready for shipment and for this reason I pounced on you. While we are on the subject of your direct manifestations, clarify for me some somewhat obscure circumstances. On the night of May 24, 1963, you came to my room. You were in the guise of a woman, or rather a large woman. You threw yourself at me. I tried to resist, as usual, at a given moment you made me completely immobile. Then I had to suffer your assault. You know that when the two of us fight, I instinctively bite your hands and arms, I touch you with my hands, but when I bite you, I don't squeeze anything with my teeth. How come I touch you with my hands, that is, I feel your limbs touching me, and I don't grip anything with my teeth? Demon, you got the explanation that same night. Immediately after that woman's assault, you saw me in human form near your bed. Then you did a study on me. You stopped to observe my complexion, nerves, veins, and bone structure. You saw the human body, in skin and bones. You had the instinct to touch me. As soon as your hand touched my hand, I instantly disappeared and you were left alone in the room. We demons, although rebellious, have preserved our angelic nature, with intelligence that surpasses all human intelligence. We know many secrets of nature, so we can take any sensible form and we can also show what doesn't physically exist or not show what exists or make the various sensations feel or not. The body of that woman you felt on you and the human body you saw did not exist as such, but they acted as if they physically existed. Exorcist, why did this attack happen that night? Demon, for an outpouring of anger against you, because the previous day you had been received by the Pope in a private audience and you had the opportunity to confide in him, which I was sorry for. Exorcist, it seems to me that you make so many attacks on me purposely and inappropriately. Do you remember, Melid, how years ago you attacked me in the middle of the night? You came into my little room, as usual you threw yourself on my neck, but you could do little, because as you saw, a threatening hand appeared on the shoulder of my bed and you, after a few minutes, had to leave me and leave. And at the end of July, 1983, when I was in Fugi in the Pensione Santa Chiara, why did you come and throw a hand grenade into my room? What a shot and what an explosion, I said, this time Melid will have smashed the sink, mirrors, and more. Instead everything remained intact. Demon, I wanted to disturb you because in Fugi, with your daily evening conferences, you snatched some souls from me, which I had, and they returned to Christ. Exorcist, Melid, there was a long period in which your attacks were very frequent. Demon, of course, because then you wrote books without interruption, staying in the quiet of a mountain. With every book you wrote, my anger increased, so I attacked you even in the form of an obsession. Exorcist, by the way. At that time, I had the desire to see how you took possession of me. Jesus satisfied me. One evening, as I was preparing to rest, finding myself in my little room, I suddenly heard the approaching of a cyclone, preceded by a sharp hiss, at a height of 1 meter from the bed. At the same time I was in your possession and I found myself in a diffuse cave of twilight. There were 3 of you, with black faces. The other 2 sat down and watched the fight scene unfold between the 2 of us. The fight was strong and lasted for 10 minutes, because as soon as you left me, I checked my watch. Melid, how much trouble you cause me, and in how many forms you manifest yourself to me, even along the streets, as you did, in this city of mine, right in the square, during the night in Florence, in the shelter, in the form of a night guard. I would like to know what advantage you have when you multiply the hassles on me. If I'm in bed, here's a bell ringing under the covers, or in the form of a sparrowhawk, you beat your wings strongly and repeatedly on the pillow, or you lie down next to me and let me hear your breathing too. And also what a pleasure when throughout the day you give me punches on the back, or like a spider you invade my face, and I also remember when you made me feel a big needle, which starting from the top of my head, pierced my head and face right down to the chin. In reality there was nothing, but you made me feel the pain of a real piercing. And what taste do you have when you make me hear your loud voice? Demon, Pretacho, it takes so little to understand. Since you cause me annoyance with the various forms of apostolate, I free myself with just as many annoyances. Rather, aren't you afraid of me? I'm Melid and I have a lot of possibilities to reduce you to nothing. Exorcist, actually, only a few times did I feel a little tremble in your presence, but it immediately disappeared, thinking that you are not free and cannot deviate an inch from God's will. In fact, when you threatened me, I always told you, I'm not afraid. If God allows you, go ahead and act, otherwise you can't do anything to me. Do you remember the threat you made to me last time? Demon, Pretacho, you will see what I will do to you this night. I waited for you at night and you came, but you couldn't enter my room, you knocked on the door, but you couldn't get in. Exorcist, Melid, let's get into another topic. You know how Jesus chooses souls directly and puts them in the mystical state. These are the assault battalion against you demons. They have the stigmata, the crown of thorns, they enjoy many celestial visions. However, they suffer a lot because they have to save many souls. You demons know these privileged souls one by one. Demon, and yes, we know them, we follow them individually night and day, as we knew and followed Padre Pio. If the working of Christ in such souls is 100 degrees, our diabolical working is at least 90 degrees. We fight mystical souls, directly and indirectly, we fight against the spiritual director of each of them. I know that you have been and still are the spiritual director of many privileged souls for many years. This task of yours must make you understand the anger I feel towards you, and now what would you like to know? Exorcist, just some clarification. I won't tell you the history of the different mystical souls, I will only focus on one of them, which I have followed and directed for about 35 years. You know who I intend to talk to you about, that woman, martyr of the religious vocation. From childhood Jesus manifested himself and chose her as an extraordinary victim. Jesus inspired in her the strong desire to become her nun, according to the style of the various monasteries, but due to your evil work she was unable to profess and was mercilessly kicked out of all the communities. Do you, Melid, remember what happened in Turin, in the Institute of the Sisters of Sant'Anna, near the Rondo? During the period in which he wore the religious habit every evening, while the community was at rest, opening the closed doors and the entrance door, you grabbed the young woman and with her on the motorcycle you went around the city for a few hours. The inhabitants of the neighborhood were scandalized to see a young man, who was you, going around with a young woman, dressed in religious habit. The story repeated itself every night around 11 o'clock. The superior was informed, which she did not want to believe, until one day she presented the whole community in front of many people, saying, "Point out to me among those present the young woman you accused." Everyone says, "It's that. Is that?" The next day a telegram informed the young girl's relatives, from which she was sent away. Do you still remember Melid? How that young woman was accepted on probation in the community of sisters in Castelfidardo? You did the rest there too. One day, while the sisters were in the choir for the services, you appeared in human form and the superior could see you. Suddenly you took off the young girl's dress and left her in the choir in her panties. All the sisters ran away in horror and the young woman was sent home as soon as possible. You, Melid, were stubborn and I too was stubborn in the arduous undertaking. As spiritual director, I looked for a cloistered monastery. I informed the abbess about everything, who decided to admit her into the community. Here too the diabolical harassment continued, stronger and more frequent than elsewhere. I multiplied my visits to this monastery. The abbess confided everything to me and seemed courageous, even when you showed yourself openly to her. The young girl was trained in your wicked blows, and you prepared a rather strange one for her. She had been admitted to the religious habit. A few days before her you cut off her locks of hair, which I currently keep as a souvenir of her. This fact made the abbess apprehensive, because during her function it was prescribed to cut 3 locks of hair with scissors, so that at the prescribed moment she had to pretend to cut the hair that wasn't there. Tell me, Melid, what purpose did you have when you cut the hair? Demon, one day the young girl had done an act of vanity for her beautiful brown hair and the Most High allowed me that cut as a repair for the act of vanity. Exorcist, but you didn't stop there. At night you took her around the city. In conclusion, the martyr of the religious vocation was expelled from the monastery. It was my duty to take an interest in the case. In the city where I live I knew an excellent priest, a parish priest. I informed him of everything. He took the pitiful case to heart and I entrusted it to him, telling him, if strange things happen, call me on the phone and I'll come straight away, because I know what to do. It didn't take long and one morning the parish priest called me on the phone, come here immediately. There were 2 priests in the young girl's room, and she was in bed, lying on the blanket, dressed and well composed. Her face was bloody, with several sores, one on her forehead, another on her chin, 2 on the cheekbones of her face and her lips were singed. Her hands were tied very tightly to her wrists, so much so that they had turned black. It wasn't the first time this had happened and therefore not it made such an impression on me. I asked the young woman, who overall was calm, what happened. Last night, around 11 o'clock, I was kneeling by the bed. The devil came, she grabbed me as she always does, and took me around. This morning around 5 o'clock she brought me here. Before her, touching me, she burned my face, then she tied my hands. Reverend, I said to the parish priest, don't worry, since these events have been repeated many times, the young lady knows how to medicate herself. But you should know that after a week your face will have no trace of these wounds and your complexion will return as fresh as that of a child. He himself cut the string that bound his hands with his pocket knife. And thank goodness that this time she was tied with laces. Many times she is tied with steel chains and then it is difficult to break them. If you only knew how many of these steel laces and chains I have kept in my office. I asked the young lady, when you are alone, how do you untie yourself? I pray to my guardian angel, who touches the chain or lace and I remain free. What does he do with so many laces and chains? I throw them out the window. Luckily, I have kept several of these talismans. Now Melid, I ask you, why do you treat this young woman like this? Demon, with his life as a victim, he tears away many souls from me, and I, unable to do anything else, torment them night and day. I know that Christ will win, but at least I vent my anger. Exorcist, Melid, you have powerful enemies and they are those who are usually in intimate friendship with God and who carry out a fruitful apostolate. But unfortunately you have many friends, and they are often the ones who deny your existence. They do not believe in you, but follow your directions. They deny hell and live peacefully in sin, intent only on satisfying their passions. You also have another category of friends, and they are those who connect you with seances, especially mediums. You want mediums and their curious friends to call you. They believe they are calling the soul of someone who has passed away and usually do not know that it is you who is answering their questions. You are interested in disguising yourself, because in seances you intend to inculcate reincarnation. You make people believe that the deceased called are extraterrestrial people, wandering for purification and then going to heaven. You know that by accepting reincarnation, hell is cancelled out. Do you remember, Melid, how one day I asked you, Melid, in the name of God, answer, isn't it true that the reincarnation you inculcate is a trick? You replied, and if you know it's a trick, why do you ask me? Even when I sow lies, there are those who believe me. Explain to me something about seances. The medium calls a deceased person and those present believe that the deceased person answers questions of curiosity. Many times you, Melid, behave meekly, instructing those present with lies. Sometimes you appear angry. Why? In fact, more than one person has told me what happened in their presence. In these days a young man came to see me, who was astonished. He told me, I was in Vicenza. With a group of friends we called the soul of a man, the medium began to feel ill and was drooling from the mouth. Suddenly the paintings, and what was on the walls of the room, began to shake. The desk, near which the young men were standing, rose from the ground to a height of more than a meter and attached itself to a wall of the room, remaining suspended by itself. It then fell onto the floor. My companions and I went out scared. There were 14 of us, and everyone had a motorcycle on the street. None of the bikes worked, they were all blocked. He told me as a young man, I never want to find myself in similar circumstances again. What a fright. In other seances no disorder had occurred. Tell me, Melid, why did that ruckus happen? Demon, you might understand why. Although those who ordinarily attend are not very religious, or impure, or have been away from the sacraments for years, by chance there are those who keep some sacred object on them, either of Christ or of that woman, my enemy, and then I make those present pay for their invocation with strong fears. Exorcist, Melid, our interview is not complete if you don't answer other more interesting questions than the previous ones. Reply, do all demons have the same strength? Demon, no, Christ taught us this when he told the apostles that they were incapable of driving out the devil from a possessed person. This kind of demons can be overcome with prayer and fasting. The strongest genre is that of impurity. The impure demons are the most powerful and it is easy for us to win in the fight. One of the leaders of this category of demons is me, exorcist. I know that men and women have the gift of freedom. So if we want, we can overcome any of your assaults. Demon, in theory it is so, but in practice it is not. We have a lot of intelligence and no human tendencies. We know how to take each creature for its own sake, and with our impure temptations, we darken intelligences and bend wills, just as steel bends with fire. The most effective tactic is knowing how to take women and men with the love of the heart. When we take it by heart, 90% of the time we sing victory. Exorcist, I believe that you demons are specialized, just as the soldiers of the earthly army are specialized. Some fight in the air, some at sea, and some on land. Therefore, there will be demons among you who for the slightest thing push you towards blasphemy, hatred, theft, atheism, etc. However, I also think that many types of sins, if you do them a few times, can easily be hated, while impurity, after a few slips, is not usually hated and is rarely corrected. Melid, I have asked you several times during exorcisms, what is the sin that sends the most souls to hell? You replied, I don't need to tell you, you know it. In my opinion it is impurity. Demon, see, you know, all those who are in the hellish pit are there because of impurity. They also committed other sins, but they always damned themselves for this sin or even with it. Exorcist, what do you think of all those who live in immorality? Demon, I think that they are already written in the register of the damned and that only a great grace could erase them. Exorcist, so the divorced men and women are written in the book of your slaves. Demon, the Most High, before whom everything must be pure and without blemish, will not accept into his kingdom of the blessed those who spend their lives in daily impure sin. It was I and other comrades of mine who convinced the heads of state to issue the divorce law, making it clear that this law is a requirement for the progress of peoples. The first to pay for this law, which you, Protaccio, call unfair and which I instead call the treasure of my kingdom, will be the legislators, responsible for the impure sins of the divorced, and then men and women who have accepted the terrible law are responsible. Exorcist, wretched are the divorced, who for a short life of fleeting pleasure will forever have to suffer the torments that you yourself must currently suffer. Demon, Melid, make them understand that the words of Christ are to be despised and do not make them reflect that there is nothing to joke about with the Most High. Exorcist, and what will it be of the numerous prostitutes? Demon, I hold them close to my heart, so that none of them leaves me. The strongest chain for them is pleasure and the lust for money. Hell is wide and there is a place prepared for each of them. Exorcist, do you, Melid, like private, solitary sins that have no repercussions on others more, or sins that cause scandal and push others towards evil? Demon, I certainly prefer the scandalous, because with them the sins multiply. The world is full of scandals, and therefore my companions and I are closer to the scandalous ones, who are our best helpers. Exorcist, Jesus Christ says, whoever follows me does not walk in darkness. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. It is impossible for scandals not to occur. But woe to the world for scandals, and woe to the man through whose fault the scandal occurs. It would be better if a millstone were tied around the neck of the scandalous person and he was thrown into the depths of the sea. I ask myself, if the words of Jesus, Redeemer and Supreme Judge of humanity, are so terrible, how can the scandalous live in such serenity? Demon, I'll intervene. I do spiritual anesthesia, invisible but real. Just as the doctor, after anesthesia, can cut and even mutilate a human body, without the patient feeling pain, so I act. I don't make people reflect on the responsibility of human acts before the Creator, and so every remorse is nullified. Everything is considered legal. Exorcist, coming to the details, what system do you use with the various categories of immoral people? Demon, I misrepresent the orders of the Creator, who gave a human body as an instrument of procreation. Working in the minds of the impure, I persuade them that bodily continence is not possible. After this conviction, I stir up passions according to sex, age and the various circumstances that life presents. Exorcist, what could those circumstances be? Demon, the exaggerated and imprudent familiarity between men and women and in general the entertainment that stimulates the barking of passions. Exorcist, I believe that the television is one of the most effective means for your diabolical work. Used for good, it is a source of good. Used badly, it is a torrent of iniquity. In the late hours of the night, more immoral and even disconcerting scenes are broadcast. Demon, I excite the curiosity of adults, young people and children, satiating their immoral desires. Exorcist, then they will deal with God, the just judge, the supporters of such perfidious broadcasts, the owners of the television and those who watch them. Previously the school of immorality used to be outside the family environment. Today, with the badly used television, it is in the house. And what about bad movies? The mass of spectators becomes satiated with impurity, and you, impure demons, keep in your infernal nets these masses of both sexes, who are not always satisfied with the looks and thoughts and reach even further. Demon, all these, as you said well, are inside my net, but intoxicated with impure pleasure, they do not see my net. They will see it later, when they have no more remedies in the eternal fiery furnace. Do you, Pretacho, think that televisions and films are the only means I use to populate hell? Just as the shepherd enjoys seeing a large meadow full of fresh herbs, so and even more do I enjoy seeing the masses of women in modern fashion, especially on the beaches. Eagerly, we demons of uncleanness look forward to the summer time to bind more men and women to our nets of uncleanness. Exorcist, Melid, Jesus said it explicitly, if a man looks at a woman with bad desire, he has already sinned with her in her heart. Unhappy foolish women, know that there is impurity of the body and that of thought. Who can enumerate the bad thoughts and desires that your shameless fashion arouses in dissolute men along the streets and especially on the beaches, where there are hosts of impure demons? You act like this on the beaches to wash your body and dirty your souls and those of those who look at you maliciously. You want to avoid the heat of the season with your swims in the sea and don't think that you are preparing eternal fire. You laugh at the thought of eternal fire, but the women who preceded you in death and who are currently paying with the damned do not laugh. Demon, I am very intelligent and to succeed in my task in the world, I arouse the weakness of correction in the parents of many young women, who are primarily responsible for the indecent fashion of their daughters. I make women who dress immodestly understand that there is nothing wrong with wearing indecent clothing, as there are now many women who dress like this. For freedom on the beaches, I insinuate the desire to be looked at and admired. Pretacho, I'll show you what you don't know. In hell, there are currently the most beautiful women in the world, those who in life used their physical beauty to seduce men. Exorcist, but why don't these women who dress immodestly think that they are dying and that their body will become food for worms? Demon, it is I, Melid, who pushes these thoughts away from their minds, which could make them detach from me. I do similar work with those who enjoy dancing, at balls and also in families. Exorcist, of course your work with dance lovers is not empty of impure fruits, since the lascivious music and movements required by modern dances were invented to awaken and excite concupiscence. They too belong to your evil kingdom. I am convinced that pornographic reading and printing are also poisons of immorality, which you widely use to ruin souls. Demon, of course. Books that tempt passions and scandalous images are powerful weapons at my service. I distract from healthy reading, inoculating antipathy towards it and excite the desire for impure things. Writers know this, and for the sake of profit they pour the seeds of impurity that they have in their hearts into the pages of novels and magazines. These readings excite the senses and the desire for pleasure in the readers, and so my prey increases more and more. Exorcist, Melid, let me know the tactic you have for changing consciousness and character within families. Boys and girls, previously good, obedient, studious, frequent at sacred functions and easy to communicate. As soon as the period of childhood is over, many of these, as they grow, abandon the sacraments, despise prayer and feel antipathy and even hatred for everything related to religion. Demon, and you, Pretacho, are you not capable of understanding the reason for the changes? When we are in childhood, passions are usually not felt or are very weak. Once childhood has passed, puberty begins with the relative awakening of concupiscence. To emerge victorious from this period we need the grace of God, which comes with prayer, vigilance and goodwill. Not everyone clings to these means, because I intervene and work hard to make people enjoy the drug that is spreading in the world today. Once tried once or a few times it can no longer be left out and it would seem that it becomes an urgent need. So, and even worse, it happens when one has tasted the drug of immorality. You fall again and you become apathetic. If other coefficients then arise, it can lead to schizophrenia, which medicine cannot cure. How many, especially of the male sex, reach the point of madness and have to stop studying or working, because they are dominated by the mania for impurity? Schizophrenia is not always caused by the abuse of passions, but one of the most important causes is precisely this. Naturally, those who are dominated by sex mania end up turning against God, who prescribes the restraint of passions. Exorcist, Melid, some time ago I asked you, what can you tell me about male youth? You cheerfully answered me. Today's young people go looking for sows. And what about female youth? Exulting you said, young girls do worse than young men. Modern youth is largely burned by impurity. And what do you have to say about families? Marriage is a sacrament and therefore the coexistence of a man with a woman, when it is according to the law of God, brings good. Demon, I also intervene in families in 1,000 ways and you, Pretacho, are aware of it. How many moral miseries there are before marriage? Parents often cooperate in this, leaving their sons and daughters in the engagement with little or no supervision, especially in the evening hours, going around in the car or on foot. I seize the moment to tempt them and make them fall. They are interested in the woman wearing a white dress on her wedding day. I exploit the weakness and ignorance of many parents, who leave their daughters with maximum freedom to leave the house and come home whenever they want. The number of single mothers is increasing more and more, because in this regard I do my job as a tempter well. During married life my assaults have not stopped. I often manage to convince parents not to accept their children, and if the Almighty gives them a gift, they kill them before they are born. Many times I lay traps to slow down the affection, and I managed to make the man's heart bind to the woman of another man, and even better, I managed to bind the woman's heart to the man of another woman. Through the spirit of impurity, I reach the point of legal separation, destroying natural love towards children. Exorcist, what other tricks do you implement? Demon, I make you think that before, marital separation was considered a reason for dishonor, while with progress it is considered something necessary, because the heart cannot be commanded and freedom cannot be violated by anyone. The fruits of my diabolical work are great, because with the goad of impurity I drag men and women where I want. Exorcist, and so you drag them to hell. Demon, of course. Once death has occurred, they will have my fate, there, where there is eternal crying, remorse and gnashing of teeth. Exorcist, now, Melid, I command you to answer the last request. I know well that you don't want to answer, but I command you. Demon, and who are you, Protaccio, that you claim to give me commands? Exorcist, I am a miserable creature, but as a priest and minister of God, by the divine authority inherent in my priesthood, I order you to answer me by telling the truth. According to the answers you have given me so far, it would seem that the whole world is in your possession due to immorality. But in the world, in addition to your kingdom, there is also the kingdom of God. Evil makes more noise than good, but how much good there is in humanity today, the souls who with a solemn and private vow serve God in celibacy, cannot be counted. How many men and women observe purity to the point of being killed instead of sinning? How many parents observe the duties of marital continence with admirable regularity? How much glory these hosts of souls give to God. Speaking of good souls, victorious in temptations, tell me, what things do you hate and fear most? Demon, 2 things, the first is prayer and the second is escape from bad occasions. Exorcist, and why are you afraid of prayer? Demon, it is the first step towards God, it attracts His graces, and I find it difficult to attract to me those who pray a lot and with faith and perseverance. All those who are now in hell did not pray, or prayed little and rather badly. I especially hate the prayer addressed to that woman, whose name we demons never mention. The second thing I hate is running away from bad opportunities. My slaves of impurity not only do not flee from bad opportunities, but they hunt for them, seeking them avidly. Exorcist, Melid, our interview is over, and I think you're going to make me pay. This matters little. What matters instead is convincing souls that you and demons exist and work tirelessly for the ruin of souls.